We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday. Now, normally on Saturdays, we try to have Ed on the program. Ed told me a little while back that he had some shit going on during the time we would normally record. So he's not on this week. He'll probably be back on next week. So tonight, today, whatever time you listen, it's just me. So I'll do what I can to keep it together, but you can get pretty lazy when you have the guest I have on. They do a great job. They carry a lot of the load, and all I have to do is kind of push them in certain directions and get them talking, and they all have a great perspective. So Ed won't be with us on this show, but he'll be upcoming, and we've got more guests in the offing, so we should be in good shape. Now, I got a bunch of emails that I'm going to cover, which I always look forward to. Again, it's great to get the perspective of the listeners. They're just as important to this show as I am, and I appreciate it when people want to participate. I want to tell you a quick story that has nothing to do with politics, and I kind of alluded to it yesterday when I was on with Matt. Um, Yesterday, or actually, was it Thursday, was a very long day. We were flying back from Savannah to Minneapolis. We left at about 10, 11 in the morning, didn't get back till about 3. Um, and I didn't do a single TikTok. I did do a podcast when I got home, but I did no TikToks, which is unusual for me. I in 4 years, I can't think of a day where I haven't done at least a couple, 3 TikToks, but I didn't do it. And here's why. I had to fly back, so I can't do it on the plane. As soon as I got off the plane, I had to get into a car, go to my son's place, and watch or babysit my granddaughter for a couple of hours. By the time I get home, it's 8, 9 o'clock, a little late to do TikToks, but still plenty of time to do the podcast, which I did do. But the thing about it is in addition to all of that and the time being very short, I wasn't feeling very well. I don't know if you could notice that in the podcast from yesterday. My stomach was a little funny. I don't know if it was someplace we ate or just a flu bug or whatever, but I was not really feeling well. But in spite of that, my wife and I did go to watch our granddaughter because we wouldn't miss that for anything. Would have flown home early if I had to. Anyway, so we get to my son's place. We meet them at a farmer's market, which is about a block and a half away from where they live. And my son's working a booth for the city or something. And we're there to get her and bring her back. And he's going to follow closely behind and meet us back at the apartment. And he has the key to the apartment. Okay. So we go back. My son's not there yet. We can't get into the apartment, but we can get into the lobby and everything else. And so we go into the party room because they've got a lot of places to sit, a TV, and all kinds of stuff. So we go in there with our granddaughter, Junie, and there's a foosball table there. And I say, Junie, I'll teach you how to play foosball. And of course, she's all excited about that. We start playing. She doesn't get it. She doesn't understand. But grandma's helping her, and they're shooting the ball around, and they score on me 2 or 3 times. And of course, every time they score on me, Junie gets all excited. She starts taunting me, how good she is at this. And so after a few times, I say to myself, well, this girl's got to learn to be a competitor, maybe lose on occasion. So I took the ball and I shot it in the goal and scored. And of course, I did what she does. I taunted her a little bit. Now, I should know better, having been married to a woman for 40 years, but I can be dumb sometimes. The moment I did that, my granddaughter got very upset, very angry with me, folded her arms, sat cross-legged under the foosball table, and wouldn't talk to me. Now, the thing with Junie is she can get mad at you. And if you just let her go after a short period of time, she gets out of it and we start on something else. So eventually we go up to the apartment, and my wife, grandma, is making pizza, and Junie's helping her, and my son's doing something else I don't know. And I'm sitting on the couch. Now, keep in mind, I'm not feeling well, and I didn't get much sleep the night before because I wasn't feeling well. So I'm sitting on the couch and I'm starting to doze off, as I'm wont to do, given my age and just the way I was feeling. So I'm sitting there dozing off. And as I'm dozing off, I'm not quite asleep yet. I feel my granddaughter near me, and then I wake up and she's putting blankets on me, covering my legs and putting the blankets up underneath my chin. And I look at her, I say, honey, what are you doing? She goes, well, I'm making you comfy cozy because you're very old. I said, so grandma's been talking to you, right? She goes, yeah, me and grandma thought this was best. Okay, fine. And then she starts to walk away and she stops and she turns around and said, Grandpa, I'm very sorry. I go, what are you sorry about, honey? Says, well, when we were playing that game and you cheated and I got mad, I said, hold on a minute. I didn't cheat. She goes, oh, yeah, you did cheat. Okay. She said, when I got mad, I said some mean things. I said I didn't love you. I said, I don't remember you saying that. She goes, oh, no, I said that. Definitely said that. Okay. She says, but I want you to know, I always love you, Grandpa. I was just angry at the time. So I'm sorry for that. And I told her, I said, look, here's what you got to understand, Junie, is that no matter how mad you get, no matter what you might say, Grandpa and Grandma always love you no matter what. And she looks at me and she goes, whoa, that's a relief. So anyway, it's a touching moment. And I said, give me a kiss on the cheek. And she does. And, um, and as she's walking away, she turns around. She goes, now get some rest, poopy butt. That little girl is a smart ass, and I couldn't be prouder. She is going to drive her mom and dad nuts because she's going to be a lot like grandma and grandpa. And grandma and grandpa tend to drive these people nuts because we are who we are. Anyway, that's the story. And I like telling it because I know some other people like to hear the grandkid stories. Other people don't like to hear the grandkid stories. And as I've said before, it's my show. I'll talk about whatever the fuck I want. So anyway, let's get to the emails. First one says, hey, Boomer and Boomer Brigade. Gee, these anti-commie, anti-libtard MAGA types who are against supporting the Ukraine and who think Putin is a great guy must be a little confused today. It seems former KGB agent Vladimir Putin is not only courting Z and the communist Chinese, but today is cozying up to Kim and the communist North Korea dictator to form an alliance. Gee, I thought they hated communists. Aren't they always calling everyone who disagrees with them communist? I want them to explain how their hero Putin is now joining hands and having a love fest with Kim of communist North Korea. Or do they like Kim too? I mean, after all, CF 45 says they were in love, right? I think MAGA and the Republicans are confused, don't you? The old Republicans would say of Putin, once a red, always a red, which of course would be true. I want to see someone in the media do something with this. We wouldn't want the MAGA crowd freaking out over this, would we? So are they going to have to admit that their hero Putin is still a commie? Don't know these kids today. Z-Man. Well, you're absolutely right about that, Z-Man. And I'll tell you what the deal from my perspective is with Vladimir Putin. Things aren't going well for Vladimir Putin in the war or in the country, in the economy. As much as Vladimir Putin would like us to believe that he's incredibly strong, he's not. He's very weak. So he's willing to get into bed with virtually anybody, like China or North Korea. I mean, he sees them as all adversaries to the United States. So I think this is an intention. His intent here is to try to scare us. Well, Vlad, I will tell you, we ain't scared. We ain't motherfucking scared. It's a lame and desperate attempt to try to intimidate us. And unfortunately for him, it ain't going to work. All right. The next email says, "Hiya, Mike." Excuse me. "Hiya, Mike. Jay from California. I've taken a look at my schedule and I fly home the 28th, so I'd prefer to appear on the show at some point this coming weekend if that works for you. I'm on Denmark time, so we'll have to see what that translates to for you. I'm available most other days as well after 6 p.m. my time because that's when dinner is served at the school. Look forward to it. P.S. There are 2 Israelis and 1 Palestinian at my school. None of them are fans of the war." Well, Jay, you're more than welcome to come on the show. I've told you that before. It might be a little hard when you're in Denmark to match up times, but when you come to California, we can definitely work it out. When you get there, just email me at rationalboomer@gmail.com and we'll set it up. I'm looking forward to it. Next one comes from Lady Cheryl. This was a note on the podcast page. She says, "Hi, Boomer. Love your show. I listen just about every day and I catch up when I don't. I just heard that Frumpy Dump is actually being briefed on different debate issues. What are your thoughts on this? Thank you." I've heard that Joe Biden is putting in the work to get ready for this situation, and I'm glad of that. Um, I've heard 2 different things. I've heard that they're trying to tell Donald Trump what to do, and then I've also heard that he's just going to wing it, which is great. But to be perfectly honest with you, if they are trying to train him or get him ready for this debate by giving him information or strategies or anything, do you really think he's going to follow those? Yeah, I don't think so. Donald Trump is going to get shook during this debate. And I think what Joe Biden needs to do, he needs to handle this as a normal debate, but every once in a while, take a dig at him. 34 felony charges, liable for sexual assault or rape, and do all those things at different times because this will get under his skin. And once you get under Donald Trump's skin, there's really no going back. He departs from any strategy, he departs from anything planned, and he just goes batshit crazy. So I'm hoping Joe Biden, that's one of the things they're telling him to do. Keep digging Donald Trump, get him shook, get him emotional, because that's when we're going to have the best show. Mike Z says, "Terrific. Be advised, according to Politico, a rift is brewing between the conservative judges in SCOTUS, started by Amy Barrett, Amy Coney Barrett, over gun control." Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with the Supreme Court. They're starting to feel the pressure of everyone in the country questioning their legitimacy or their credibility. And there's starting to be some infighting, much like we're seeing with the Republican Party. The Republican Party is not unified, and that's one of the reasons they can't win in November. There's fewer Republican voters, and they need everyone in the party to vote the same way, and that's just not going to happen. And as I say, the Supreme Court is starting to feel the pressure now, and they're going to start fighting amongst themselves. I don't know what that pans out to being. I don't know how this affects things ultimately, but it ain't going to be good. The Supreme Court really has to look at what they're doing and understand we're 4 or 5 months away from the election. And when the Democrats take control, well, there's going to be a new sheriff in town, and they aren't going to have the leeway that they've had up to this point with the Trumplafucks giving him carte blanche to do anything they want. That's going to stop. And there's likely to be some changes. And the fact that they're fighting amongst themselves, especially the conservatives, I'm all for it. All right. Next one comes from Rhonda. She says, "Hi, Boomer. Since the debate is next week, Trump has been looking for every way to get out of it. I think he has this in his mind. Since the trial has been over in Manhattan, the orange turd has been trying to get the gag order lifted. Of course, his appeal for that was denied. I love it. Sources say that he's contending to the court that if he has a gag order and if it isn't lifted, he cannot do the debate. He says it's not fair and it's hampering him in the debate. So there it is. He's going to blame Alvin Bragg in New York for him not going to the debate. That's my contention anyway. We'll see what happens. Can't wait to hear what you have to say, Rhonda. You know, I hadn't thought about that, but that sounds like Donald Trump. He's going to look for an excuse to get out of it. The gag order was not taken off, it's going to be held. And because of that, that is an excuse for him. That is a way that he thinks he can save face. So you may be right. You may be right on that. I'm hoping against hope that he's stupid enough to show up, because this will be even worse for Donald Trump than if he just pussies out. Thank you, Rhonda. Next one says, Hi, Boomer. I have a few updates to things you've talked about. The meeting with the probation officer was Zoom. I knew that. He didn't really go in. He must take the drug test before the sentencing hearing. If he hasn't taken it, his bond can be revoked and he will go to jail immediately. I suspect he'll take it. And that would kind of tie in with something Ed said last week, that Donald Trump looks a little disheveled and disoriented. And it may be because he's trying to clean himself up from whatever drugs he's taking, presumably Adderall, maybe cocaine, who knows. He seems to be up and down in his energy, and that would suggest some kind of drug. So maybe he's trying to clean himself up between now and sentencing, but that's going to take its toll. And that may be why he's so confused all the time. Going through withdrawal is not the easiest thing in the world. The email goes on. I was reading about the SCOTUS decisions. July 1st is just a guideline or rule of thumb or something. The announcements of their decisions can go into July, even into the second week. Unfortunately for us, that makes us wait longer. Goes on and says his immunity case isn't for total and complete immunity for everything. Even his lawyers weren't stupid enough to argue that. It's a very narrow argument about things that were within the scope of the official duties as POTUS. I know they argued for a more broader case in the appellate court, but the wording that got to SCOTUS was narrow. All the TV lawyers I've heard talk about it agree. Spending 4 months planning a coup against his own government to stay in power is not within his official duties. Apparently, the question is what is and isn't an official duty, or that's their excuse for taking so long anyway. I heard one court watcher say they think there are dispute fights among the justices. We may never know. The executive order Biden signed about immigration was to reverse a really stupid rule. If one spouse is a citizen and one is undocumented, and the undocumented one wants to apply for a permanent residency, a green card, and qualifies, they have to leave the country to put it in that application. There is no guarantee they'll be let back in. I've been trying to come up with a scenario where someone thought that was not only a good idea but necessary, but I can't. It had to be someone who hated immigrants. I'm glad Biden reversed it. Until next time, Grandma Patty. P.S. I wasn't hacked. I wanted to have a different online. Yeah, what's going on? A different online entity. My other accounts still exist unhacked. Good to know. And this is what I'm saying about the listeners. They always give us good information. And I'm frequently, I frequently learn from listeners, whether they be on the show or in their emails, and I appreciate it immensely. All right, the next one says, Hi, Mike. This email started out to be just a brief note, but as it turned out, it morphed into a mini novel. I hope you bear with me. I just listened to your podcast of 620 with you and Old Soul. Damn, is that Old Soul one wonderful person? Yes, she is. I can't even find the words that would do justice in explaining how lucky we all are that she is a part of our society. We're lucky to have her because of her altruistic acts of unselfish concern for other people and the things she does simply out of a desire to help others, expecting nothing in return. We not only benefit by the example Old Soul sets for us by her altruistic efforts, but also benefit from the way she looks at the world, how she looks at solving problems head on, and how she interprets, analyzes, and offers common sense solutions to our political issues as well as our societal problems. She is truly an inspiration to all of us to do what each of us can in our own lives to benefit the lives of our fellow human beings. I don't know how old she is, nor is it any of my business, but I'd venture to say that Old Soul's wisdom and intellect is far beyond her age. Some of us, maybe a good many of us, live a whole lifetime and never get to her level. I will tell you this, I don't think she's shy about it all. She's in her early 40s. So she's about 20 years younger than me, maybe a little more. But she is wise for her age. I'm not sure what she does for work, but a person of her caliber could make a substantial contribution to any number of organizations. As for you, Mike, I think you are way too hard on yourself when you compare yourself to Old Soul. You often humbly say that what you do for others doesn't even come close to measure up how Old Soul puts herself out there to be of help to others. But seriously, you're either wrong or too modest about your efforts. Never been accused of being too modest. I try to ride that line between confidence and cocky. Don't want to be cocky. That's bullshit. But confidence has always been with me, and I'm not sure where that comes from. Mike, remember, it is you, because of you that we all benefit from having your extended an invitation for Old Soul to participate regularly on the platform. If it weren't for you recognizing the caliber of person she is, your 300K peers wouldn't have the opportunity to benefit from Old Soul. So I could guess you could say I'm the Sam Phillips of podcasting. If you don't know who Sam Phillips is, he's the guy that owned Sun Records and saw the talent in Elvis. Maybe kind of a weird comparison, but not crazy. Mike, not only did you recognize her caliber, but you actually put aside your own ego and offered her a regular spot on your platform. A lot of radio hosts or podcast hosts wouldn't do that for fear of being shown up by Old Soul. Their egos couldn't handle it. Okay, now enough about the savvy stuff. Thank you, Mike Jack T. Yeah, I have a healthy ego, but I'm pretty pragmatic about it. I know what I can do, and I try to back that up, and I know what I can't do. And when you have a podcast, you want the podcast to be the best it can be. And I could do the show myself every day, but I would get bored with it. I don't know if other people would. But when you have an opportunity to bring in Ed or Eric or Jace or Old Soul and improve on the information, improve on the performance of the show, I'd be stupid not to jump at it. All right, the next one says, "Hi, Mike. I have an important message for all Republicans out there." Now, you know where this one's coming from. Everybody and their cousins are coming out of the woodwork to say that President Donald J. Trump is going more and more mentally ill. Well, obviously, it's all fake news, a hoax, and a witch hunt. His own cognitive test of repeating 3 different meaningless words in 30 minutes proves it. He simply aced the 5-year-old test category. True Republicans know that he's just a worst reflection of all his supporters, lying, grifting, stealing, twisting the words of the Bible and the Constitution, deceiving, conning, patronizing, and I can't stress this enough, more lying. These are all perfectly benevolent values shared in the Republican world. Donald Trump is providing all of that and much more in one single putrid man. Go MAGA. Panzer. All right. This one seems to have a little tongue in cheek too. Dear Creator, when you say creator, I hope you're talking about TikTok and the podcast. Um, anyway, dear Creator, I am a member of POS, Sycophants of Sympathy. We're a nonprofit coalition advocating for the rights of mental patients and the criminally insane. We take issue when you repeatedly discriminate against mentally ill people. Obviously, the Republican presidential candidate is suffering from a horrible case of increasing mental illness. But it's inhumane to treat mental patients the way you do by constantly making fun of his condition. You sound like a schoolyard bully with your dirty diaper comments. On one occasion, you even referred to a senior citizen as a pussy ass bitch. I guess it makes you feel better to denigrate those suffering with mental illness. It is cruel and unusual. Have some sympathy for those who know better. Best POS. Now, because POS stands for sycophants of sympathy, I can only imagine that that is sarcasm or satire. But am I proud of denigrating one particular senior citizen? Absolutely. I'm proud as hell about it. I gained I gained 300,000 plus followers by doing that every day for fucking 4 years. So yeah, I'm proud of it and I stand behind it. I've known a lot of old people in my life. Fuck, I'm an old people. His age isn't of concern to me. His mental capacity is, regardless of who you are, what color, what gender, what religion, what mental state. If you're trying to destroy our country, yeah, I fucking hate you. Cancel me if you like, but that's how I feel. And fortunately, I have no boss. I have nobody to tell me I can't do it. So I'm going to continue to do it. But I'm going to take your email as satire, and I appreciate it. Um, Next one says, Hi, Boomer. Debate is next week. Everyone is wondering if the orange shit mouse will show up. I give it 75% probability. Biden will mock him mercilessly. Question is, will the Troompa Loompa completely decompensate on live TV and run across the stage and attack Biden? If so, does Joe have the wherewithal to pop him in the nose? I wouldn't be surprised. Udge. We had this emailer before, and I wasn't sure how to pronounce his name, and he was gracious enough to give me a pronunciation guide here, and it's Udge. So Udge, thank you for that. You know, I was thinking about that yesterday. What happens if Donald Trump runs across the stage and tries to attack Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden wants to fight back? Now, the mental picture we're getting is these two old men fighting, which would definitely go viral. But that's really not how it will play out if you think about it. You see, what's likely to happen is because Joe Biden is protected by Secret Service, and then you've got Donald Trump being protected by Secret Service. If either one of them goes close to the other one, the Secret Service is going to converge on the situation. And now we're going to have Secret Service members trying to hold back their respective elderly folks. And then what if it gets crazy and now we have Secret Service agents fighting other Secret Service agents? This could be an entertaining show, a cross between WWE and a Geraldo Rivera show. This could be fun. Donald Trump is a coward. He's a bully and a coward. He's not going to run across the thing and go after Joe, and Joe is certainly not going to do that, with one exception. We were talking about this before. We understand that if one of the one of the opponents leaves the podium and walks toward the other, they're immediately disqualified. At least that's what I heard. I don't know that that's absolutely true. But like I said when we were talking about this before, I can see Donald Trump having a rough time and not looking good and realizing it, and then move out from the podium just so he could get disqualified. And I likened it to back in the old days of wrestling when the champion was fighting a nobody and the nobody got the upper hand and beat him or was beating him. And then the champion, knowing he's in trouble, does something crazy so he gets disqualified. And while he loses, he gets to keep the title. I could see Donald Trump doing something like that, something that fucking crazy. He'll say, and the other person who suggested this is a thought too. Well, they won't take off the gag order. I don't have my First Amendment rights, so I can't do it. I would love to do it, but I can't do it. I definitely see that happening. I also see Donald Trump losing badly and then trying to get disqualified just to stop it. Either way, I hope he shows up. Even if he purposely gets himself disqualified, that will mean it's been going badly and we will get at least some exposure of this guy and the fucking clown he is. We'll see. It's not that far off. It's Saturday. The debate is coming on Thursday. We're just a few days away. It's going to be exciting to see what goes on between now and then. And then if it actually happens, oh, it's going to be entertaining. I usually don't sit and watch television for a couple of hours at a time, but I will that night. I'm going to want to see that. And for those people that don't want or don't see it, they're going to want to hear what happened. So I got kind of a responsibility in watching this thing. Uh, but it's going to be entertaining. I don't think you'll see um, Donald Trump and Joe Biden going toe to toe. I'd still give it to Joe. Joe's 82 years old. Trump is 78, but I think Joe's a lot healthier than Donald Trump. If I'm going to bet on the fight, I'm going with Joe, but they will never connect. The Secret Service will make sure that's done before it even happens. All right. We are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Got more emails to get to, so let's do that. Next one comes from Craig. He says, "Hey, Mike, it's been a while since I sent an email, but I had to write to ask about a story I saw about Republican running against Amy Klobuchar. She is our senator here in the state of Minnesota. I believe his name is Royce White. Apparently, this dipshit spent campaign money at a strip club, calls women mouthy, and doesn't pay child support, just to name a few of his qualifications to represent Minnesota. Being from Georgia, I don't follow the politics in Minnesota all that closely, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this fuckhead. Best, Craig." Well, you describe him correctly. I've seen a couple of interviews he's done. Now, what you have to understand about Royce White, there was a time that he played basketball for the University of Minnesota. He had a lot of mental issues, like he was too fearful of flying in planes. It's just some weird shit. And he's always been kind of a mouthy guy. And I heard him say that women are getting too mouthy. He's an oddball. There's something off about him. He is a hardcore Republican. He has absolutely no chance of beating Amy Klobuchar. Amy Klobuchar has been a mainstay as a senator for the state of Minnesota for some time. And this clown, who has no political experience and is a nutcase on top of it, has little, if any, chance. I think he just likes the attention right now, but the attention he's getting is not really that positive. So I don't really worry much about that race. Royce White will fade off into obscurity when it's all said and done, and he'll have to try to come up with some other scam to make money. I would love if Royce White would come on the show and debate me. I saw him talking to some hosts, and he did what every Republican does. He talks over you, he doesn't shut up, and he keeps talking and talking and talking. There are ways to deal with that strategy. And most of the people I see interview him don't use that. They just kind of let him go. They push him, but they don't push him enough. And so I don't even know if it's worth the time, frankly, because I don't think he has a prayer in the world. He's going to get absolutely decimated by Amy Klobuchar. All right, the next one comes from the podcast page. It's a note from Catherine. She says, "I have to say this about Republicans and rich Republicans. They don't care what it's like to be in our shoes, to live from one paycheck to the next. They don't want to understand our financial plight." Well, clearly that's true. They want to take your money and give it to wealthy people who don't need it. And that may sound cynical to some people, but the fact of the matter is the proof is in the fucking pudding. This is all they do. They do nothing for the middle class. Joe was smart enough to understand that doing for the middle class and helping them to flourish is good for the country and good for the economy. But the Republicans, even though it's being proved to them, refuse to believe it or at least act on it. And they just want to siphon off money from us and give it to the wealthy because the wealthy will then fill their pockets for doing their bidding. It's frustrating. Like I've said before, the only thing we can do is eradicate these motherfuckers and send them packing. All right, the next one says, "Hi, Boomer. Matt from Ohio is only a handful of years older than my kids, but it feels a generation away in terms of insight and life and maturity. He cooks up a great stew of laid back wit and observation. I bet he's a funny dad. Yeah, I bet he is. But he's a good dad. Boomer, it sounds like your dad was some kind of character. My stepfather was a pure working man, and those are the only guys I was around as a kid. Yeah, my dad was a piece of work. He was Donald Trump on a smaller scale. He was wealthy in terms of the neighborhood. I mean, he wasn't a billionaire or anything like that, but he made a lot of money. He made more money than most people did. And that's all that mattered to him. He was a narcissistic piece of shit. He was abusive to my mom. He was abusive to the kids, more so emotionally than he was physically, but he had his moments there too. Yeah, he was a character, and that's a nice definition of him. He goes on to say, out of all of them, the welders were the baddest asses. That is tough work for tough men, and I'm sorry, not sorry if that's a stereotype. It's highly physical and skilled, and you have to concentrate continuously and wear the gear on a 100-degree day and see how long you last. Matt discussed the economic fallacy of the modern college degree, and I see young adults my kids' age struggling unless their degree or skills are very specific. These generic degrees are providing zero economic value to their holders. As Panzer would say, they are a scam and a witch hunt. My kids squeak through, maybe. One has a specific advanced medical degree, and the other can sell ice to Eskimos. But I feel for the younger generation trying to navigate this, and all with artificial intelligence and climate change bearing down on them like an 18-wheeler filling up their rearview mirror. Hopefully it compels them to and in the ballot box. Fucking Republicans. Best, Garage Door Jeff. And of course, the obligatory PS. Soul riffing on what drug Biden is supposedly on and comparing it to Popeye's spinach was too freaking funny. I watched Popeye on the Sally Star show in the Philadelphia area. I imagine Philly Paul did too. I imagine he did, assuming he's of a similar age to you and I. All right. Next one says, "Hey, Mike, was watching Lawrence O'Donnell last night, and he had Dr. Fauci on talking about his life and book. Love Lawrence O'Donnell. I think he's one of the better um, presenters on television today. Not only is a newsman, but he tends to speak the truth, and he knows how to tell a good story. And he's got a extensive background in politics and in news, and he's a sharp guy. While I'm not happy with the dog experiments, I realize that is how things were done then. He played clips of George H.W. Bush mentioning him in a presidential debate as an unknown hero. Lawrence also brought up how Fauci convinced George W. Bush to fund aid to Africa for AIDS, and it saved millions of lives. Of course, there were critics on the right criticizing his work and pretty much saying they deserved the disease because of their actions. These two examples is just more evidence where the Republicans have fallen to. In their world, Fauci is the enemy and Trump is a fine Christian and a strong leader. What the fuck? Listening to you and Eric the other day, I must agree, I believe we are on a course correction and the Republicans up and down the ballot lose bigly. The direction the right has taken is fucking nuts. Now they want the 10 Commandments in all schools and Don the Con is on board. I personally hope they continue. There are a lot of so called conservative voters who don't like religion being pushed on them. Not all Republican voters are Christians, so that will be another group not voting for him. Keep the faith, Boomer Brigade, and keep listening to the Boomer. He brought me back from the cliff before the 2022 midterms. Your friend, Texas Jace. Jace has been on the show many times. Very smart fellow, a younger guy, and we always appreciate his input. You know, a lot of people don't know that Fauci was a big part of the whole era where AIDS became an epidemic. And he did a good job then. He took some heat from the Republicans, but he did a lot of things that were positive. If you're too young to remember, that whole AIDS epidemic was terrifying for a lot of folks, and not just people from LGBTQ. It could have been anybody. And it was a little frightening back then. We needed somebody to take control, navigate through the whole thing so that we could try to keep people safe and try to remedy the situation. Now, I know that we have not come up with a cure for AIDS, and I know people still struggle with it. But I think people ultimately are doing better with it, especially with the knowledge of what it was. AIDS was much like COVID, because it just came out of nowhere. Nobody knew anything about it or how it happens or what caused it. And so it was a very scary time in the early 80s when that came about, very much like what happened with COVID. The difference is it was the perception that with AIDS, it only affected gay people or LGBTQ people. And that wasn't true. There were some concerns of how you might catch it, a kiss, a hug, a handshake. A lot of people believed that to be the case at first. There was a lot of fear mongering out there. And, people just didn't know. So they bought into some of the bullshit. COVID was a much different situation. And I made this comparison one time, and I'll do it again. When AIDS was happening, because it was perceived as a gay disease, all the evangelicals, all the radical right people came out and said, see, this is God punishing you for going against the Bible. That's what they would say. So if that is true, then you have to wonder, when COVID hit and we had a bunch of people that weren't getting the vaccination, they were largely Republican folks, and they were dying by the thousands. Over 1 million people died from COVID. So if God was punishing gay people with AIDS, could we then say that God was punishing Republicans for being fucking misogynistic, racist dipshits? It seems like a good comparison. I'm sure they wouldn't agree with me, but fuck them. We don't agree on anything. All right, the next one says, hi, Mike, long time, first time. I've been wanting to write you an email forever, but once I got to work after listening to you during my commute, work takes over and I forget to do it. Anyway, I am a Gen Xer here in Connecticut and was really moved, more so than usual, by Old Soul's latest young lady's experience. I know on occasion you mentioned the possibility of having your own merch store, and I would like to help facilitate it if you and your son need help in any way. Well, let me just tell you about my son. My son's got his own shit. I told him, do you want to help me with it? And he said, all right. And I haven't heard another thing about it. So I don't think my son is on board anymore. He goes on to say, I have been a graphic designer for over 35 years and have recent experience at setting up a print on demand web store. We should set one up and have it selling in a weekend if need be. I share your modest approach to financially benefiting from such, so I expect all proceeds to go to Old Soul and or the association she works with in housing these women who need health care. I would also consider coming on your show to discuss as my mother and daughter fade out quickly whenever I try to talk politics with them. Thanks for spreading the word of logic and reason to masses. Slow learner. Well, Slow, Yeah, I'm up for anything. Some people have asked about the merch, the t-shirts or whatever. Um, we had one listener, I think it was TJ. He made up some shirts for himself and his wife and then sent me one. And I said, TJ, you understand, you send me a t-shirt with my face and the name of my podcast on it. And you understand I can't wear that. That looks a little creepy if the guy is wearing a shirt with his face on it. That's not going to work. But I'd be curious about the merch thing and as to who would want it and if we could use the proceeds to do something positive. I will tell you this. I'd have to talk to Old Soul about it because I don't, she doesn't have a foundation. You can't just send her a bunch of money and then she's going to get taxed over it. So there's some things we have to figure out. Um, but Old Soul is um, the one person. If I said, Old Soul, here's some money, do something good with it. She's the one of the few people I could say, I don't even have to think about it. I trust that she'll do the right thing. So I'm all for it. We can talk about it. And if you want to be on the program, all you have to do is send me an email at rationalboomer at gmail. Tell me when, and we'll work out the logistics and we'll have you on the show. I'd be all for that. All right. The next one says, Hi, Mike. I want to start out by saying I love and appreciate everything you do for us. I especially like that you do a podcast every day. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to bitch a little. The last couple of podcasts you've done had some horrible delay problems, so much so that I couldn't listen to them all the way through. I know it's not your fault, and I'm sure don't know how to fix that situation. It seems like the worst ones are with Old Soul and Matt from Ohio. Eric does seem to be near as bad. It's probably just a carrier problem, I suppose. Anyway, I listen every day and love what you do. I just thought I would bring it up. Thanks, sir, Don. And Don, thanks for bringing me down. I tell you what the problem is, um, and I'm not sure if it's on my end or it's on the listener's end. I'm simply using Zoom. So what happens on Zoom is contingent on, I don't know, the internet, not only in my situation, but in their situation. And I do notice the delay some, more so in other situations and less so in other situations. I don't know exactly what I can do to fix it. I mean, if I've got somebody coming in and they live in a rural area and internet isn't great, I'd rather have a bit of a delay than not have them at all. And if I thought it was bad enough, I wouldn't run it. But I know what you're saying. I understand that. And I'll do what I can. I'll maybe look into maybe another service that would work better than Zoom. That's possible. We'll see. I get your point, and I'll do what I can. But again, this is my show, so I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. Thanks, Don. I appreciate it. All right. The next one says, Hi, Mike. Wasn't sure if my emails have been getting through. I'm available at any time after 6:30 p.m. Denmark time because that's when my classes are over for the day. My schedule changes next week as I fly back to California next Friday morning and won't be available for about a week and a half after that point. If I'm going to appear on the show before early July, this week is the time to do it. Let me know what works for you because I'm super excited to be on the show. Well, I'm happy to have you on. And it's all contingent as to when you're available and when I'm available. If you're in Denmark and it's 6:30 p.m. Denmark time, I have no clue what that is here. So if you're at 6:30 p.m. Denmark and 6:30 a.m. here, I'm just throwing it out there. I can't do it then. I usually do it later at night. So I know of all the things that happened. And it's the best time for me to do it because my wife's asleep and she doesn't have to listen to the bullshit. So I'll try to figure out the difference in time between um, Denmark time and Central Daylight Time. I'll try to figure it out, and I'll do what I can to accommodate you. So I'll do my best on that. If you're in California, it makes it a lot easier, but if you're not available, then that doesn't do me any good. We'll figure out something. Trust me. Next one says, "Hi again, Mike. In the email I sent the other day singing the praises of both yourself and Old Soul, I forgot to also give a shout out to all your other guests for their contributions to your podcast. Each one, Ed, Eric, Matt, Alona, and all the others whose name escape me now, all added information and perspectives which we, the 330,000 peers of yours, benefit from greatly. My best, all, Jack." I will say this, Jack. When you say 337,000 peers, that's on TikTok. We don't quite have 330,000 people listening to the podcast. I wish we did, and it's growing every day, but it's not quite that high. But I appreciate the point, and you're absolutely right. All the guests do a great job. They come from different perspectives, different locations, and different ages, and they all have something important to say. And I am more than happy to supply a platform for them to say it. See, that's the thing. There's a lot of people in this world that are very smart, very articulate, and um, they don't have the platform or the time to build a platform. So because I took the time to do that, and I do have a platform, it's a great opportunity where people, listeners of the show, get a chance to hear from people they may never be able to hear from because they just don't have the time or interest in creating a platform. So if I can give those folks a platform to give out the important information that they give out, I'm happy to do it. It's better for me, it's better for the show, and it's better for the listeners. All right, this next one comes from Jamie and Billy. They're out on the east side of the country. Good afternoon, Mike. Billy and I are on our way to our camping spot in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Beautiful out there, by the way. We will be tenting for the weekend in nature. My wife is big on the idea of going camping. I don't think she really thinks it out. For people who are good at camping, God bless you. I hope you have fun. I am not a camper. I've just never been good at it. I've never had the desire to do it, mainly because I'm lazy and I want to go into a hotel room and just lay the fuck down. But Jamie and Billy, I hope you have a great time. She goes on to say, I'm sure Dumpster Fire Trump is pissed that his own wife hasn't wished him a happy birthday. Well, we hope you have a wonderful weekend. Yeah, I think Donnie's a little embarrassed by that. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Next one says, Hi, Mike. Thanks for all that you do on the Rational Boomer podcast and TikTok post. I have not visited your YouTube account yet, but I'll get there. Well, I'll just tell you this. Again, I'm a lazy bastard. What you will find on YouTube is the podcast, same one that you're hearing here, but there's video with it. So you get to get distracted by this tired old face and whoever the guest is at the time. You get the same content. And if you like TikTok, when you go to YouTube, you'll just get a bunch of TikToks. So if you're listening to TikTok and the audio version of the podcast, you're getting it all. In your discussion in today's podcast with Matt, you discussed how corporations are pushing it as long as possible in order to milk us consumers until they're forced to make changes. I agree 100%. And until Congress is willing to force changes, it will never happen. Agreed. For years, I've commented that corporations are using the what the market will bear philosophy on pricing. That's why gas prices in the Bay Area in California are more expensive than in the Valley or rural farming area, even though refineries are located in the Bay Area. The price of groceries in the Bay Area rose dramatically during the pandemic and have yet to come close to normal pre-pandemic pricing. It's egregious. It really hit home when I recently moved to Portland, Oregon. I went to the same grocery chain and bought the same products that I purchased in the Bay Area, and I noticed something quite obvious. The price of everything is significantly lower in Portland, with an overall savings of 30% or more. Gas is $1.30 a gallon cheaper here. I was stunned and pleased and pissed off at the same time. I make good money, so the impact on me is negligible compared to others less fortunate. I can't even imagine the difficulty young families are going through to put food on the table while keeping up with the increasing healthcare cost, escalating housing cost, utility increases, etc. And yet, Congress is so detached from regular Americans that they are clueless to the real struggles across the country. That's why they are okay with the constant bickering, name calling, gaslighting, and refusal to actually govern. Yeah, I'm obviously speaking about the GOP. The Democrats are the only ones who are willing right now to govern and pursue legislation that helps Americans, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Build Back Better Act, Biden's cap on insulin pricing. Keep up the great work and continue to spread the truth. Your efforts are much appreciated. Joe, now from Portland. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that immensely, and you're absolutely on target with what you're saying. Um, Corporations got an advantage, and they don't want to give it up until they absolutely have to. I mean, that would be the best business decision. I'm going to keep taking as much money as I can get until they force me not to. And unfortunately, as long as Republicans are in power, that day will never occur. And that's why it's so crucial, as I've talked about before, come November, we not only have to vote out or cancel Donald Trump, but every other Republican in the down ballot, because Republicans are like cancer. You leave one, it will grow and it will metastasize and come back on you again. So we have to eradicate them all. But make no mistake, if we should be lucky enough to have the Democrats running Congress and the presidential Oval Office, we still got to be on this shit. Because while the Democrats aren't nearly as bad as the Republicans, they need some work too. There's a lot of things they could have done when they had the power and chose not to. They're now talking like they're going to be helping the um, middle class and the regular people. But I have to question, is that because they believe that and they're committed to do that? Or are they doing that because that's the best strategy against the egregious Republicans? I'm a little cynical when it comes to this, only because I watched the Democrats have every opportunity to codify Roe v. Wade and didn't. So, what I'm saying is, if we're lucky enough to get the Democrats in control of the House, the Senate, and the Oval Office, we can't slow up. We got to keep pushing. I've told you before, what's going on in this country isn't a fight between Democrats and Republicans. In real terms, it's a fight against the people of this country. It's them, both sides against us. One is worse than the other, but they're still not working to our best benefit. And that's what they're there for. So we've got to stay awake, stay loud, and keep pushing, even if it's the Democrats. All right. Here's something I wanted to talk about as we're getting close to ending this. There's been a lot of talk about fundraising, and the claim is that last month, Donald Trump raised $141 million, and Joe Biden raised just $85 million, which is a considerable amount in its own right. And people are running around saying, oh my God, Donald Trump raised so much money. See, he's got all this support. And then they're coming to me and saying, well, what about what you said? You said that fundraising is um, more descriptive of the support. And I did say that. But what I would suggest to you, before you start clutching your pearls and wringing your hands, and before the Republicans start crowing about how popular and how supported Donald Trump is, I want you to remember some things and think about some things. And I've talked about some of this before. First of all, remember when Joe Biden had a record night, got $25 million, and then just 2-3 days later, Donald Trump said, oh, well, I got $50 million. And everybody was going, oh my God, that's crazy. That's crazy. And then later on in the month, It wasn't quite as publicized. We find out that it was all bullshit. He lied about it. Some people were making promises, but there was no cash in Donald Trump's pocket that time. So that happened. And given his track record, and given that that happened after he's convicted, he said, "Oh my God, I got $100 million. People really support me." But we have no verification of that. And given he lied about $50 million, is it so far to believe that he's lying about the 100 million? If nothing else, at least exaggerating it. I want to see the proof that he's gotten the money, because he has a tendency of lying. Now, there was one situation, and again, I don't even know if this is a lie. He had a fundraising event. He got $50 million from one donor, guy by the name of Timothy Mellon, obviously an old money, East Coast wealthy guy. Isn't there a college named Carnegie Mellon? This is who we're talking about. And he claims that Timothy Mellon gave him $50 million. Did he give it to him in cash? Is it a promise? Is it going to come maybe down the road? We don't know this. But I want you to think about this. If this Timothy Mellon did give him $50 million, there's a big discrepancy here. Because if Timothy Mellon gave him $100 million, $200 million, everybody would say, "Oh my God, he's so popular." But understand one thing: Timothy Mellon only has one vote. Only has one vote. And while Joe Biden fundraised 85 million votes, you know how many people sent him money? 3 million last month. So the money is important, and it's a good example of what the support is, unless you've got some one person giving 50 or 100 million. That doesn't translate to votes. All it does is translate to advertising. But here's the interesting thing. Joe Biden's campaign recently purchased $50 million worth of advertising in all the swing states. All right. Now, Donald Trump's claiming all this money that he's collected, but guess who's not doing 50 million? Guess who's not doing 10 million? Guess who's not doing 5 million of advertising? Donald motherfucking Trump. If you had all that money, wouldn't you be using it as we get closer to the election? I think you would. I know a good part of it is going to pay his legal bills. And even if he does collect all this money and the vast majority goes to his legal bills, that doesn't go to his campaign, and again, does not translate into votes. So if you're hearing this, understand Republicans and Donald Trump regularly lie to us. They exaggerate. They're the bullies. They're trying to get in your face and scare you. That's what they're trying to do. You don't believe them because they've never been any time in history that you can believe them. So we'll see if Donald Trump actually got that much money. But even if he did get that much money, it ain't going into what it's supposed to be going into, and advertising and promoting himself for the campaign. So I'm not too excited about that. And on the same vein, as we're wrapping things up here, I wanted to bring something up because I get this comment all the time on TikTok, and I get it from family and friends too. They'll say to me, "Oh, I'm so worried about you. I'm really worried about you. You know, these MAGA and Donald Trump, they're well connected. They're going to come after you. I'm worried for your safety." And I've said this before on the podcast. I'll say it again. My attitude about that potential threat, I can steal a quote from Bernie Mac when he went up in front of a not so friendly audience and he said, "I ain't scared of you motherfuckers." And honestly, that's the way I look at it with Trumplafucks. I mean, here's the deal. They talk a good game, but they're bullies, which means they're cowards. Funny thing about it is while I get a lot of people coming to my page, Trumplafucks, they say some horrible things about me, try to insult me, try to discredit, try to dismiss me. And I think all of that is funny. I don't take it to heart because I don't really give a fuck about them. To me, they're inconsequential. So whatever they say has no meaning. But not once Not once have I had somebody threaten me. I'm going to come to your house. Never happened. Now, there are other creators that do get death threats and that sort of thing. I understand that. So the question is, why wouldn't they do that to me? And I'll tell you why. Because they're bullies and they're cowards. They will walk into only situations where they know they can win, where they know they can frighten the person, because that's how they win. The fear, the concern, being afraid. That's what they're going for. They have no substance. They can't back things up, but that's what they're trying to do. You take somebody like me with the attitude I have, they're less likely to do it to me because they're uncertain what I'd be willing to do or what I'm capable of doing. And if they have that concern or that uncertainty, I'll let them think that. I have a fairly good sized platform. I could go find out who they are and destroy their lives. Whether I would do that or not makes no matter because they don't know. They're not sure. And when they're not sure, they're not going to attack. And as far as threats, I don't take them too seriously anyway, even if I did get them. And here's why. We keep hearing about civil war. We keep hearing about how tough they are, and you better watch out because we'll get angry and then it's over. They said that prior to Donald Trump getting indicted. They said, if you indict him, there's going to be trouble. He gets indicted 4 times, not a fucking thing happens. They say, if you take him to trial, there's going to be trouble. He goes to trial, nothing, not a thing. Well, yeah, but you better not convict him or this is going to shake everybody up. In fact, Donald Trump tried to entice these people to react again, but guess what? Nobody showed up. Nobody showed up. So these guys are all talk. And if they get any kind of pushback, which they will from Biden and the National Guard and the DOJ and all that sort of stuff, uh, unless they're certain they can win and have some protection, like with Donald Trump, they ain't doing shit. They ain't going to come looking for me because they ain't going to like what they find. And I'm not suggesting I'm this tough guy. I'm 64 years old. And I had my days when I was a bit of a fighter, but I'm not anymore. But I tell you this, there's more to standing toe to toe with somebody and throwing fists. If you're smart enough, you can destroy somebody's life if they come after you. Again, it's not something I'd want to do or like to do, but if I was pushed to that extent, I would do that. And there's better ways to do it than punching somebody in the nose. Bottom line is, I'm not afraid of those motherfuckers. And you shouldn't be either. Because the moment you are fearful of something they say or something they're doing, that's when they win. That's why I get so frustrated when people call me with this gloom and doom stuff. They come to me and say, oh my God, I'm fearful of this. This is exactly what they want you to do. So fucking stop it. This is a time we've got them on the run. We need to be strong. We need to run them down and we need to finish the job. And I'm not talking about violence. We need to eradicate them from Congress, punish them for their misdeeds, and make sure it doesn't happen again. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.